What if you walk into your matrimonial bedroom and find your wife in an intimate moment with your own brother? What will you do? How would you confront a betrayal so devastating it shattered everything you believed in? Marcus Wheeler was a man who seemed to have it all. A loving wife, 4 beautiful children, and a career that made him a pillar of his community. As a sheriff, he was the protector of others, the one people turn to in their darkest moments. But what happens when the protector becomes the victim? When the betrayal comes from the very people closest to him? One ordinary day, a revelation would come crashing into Marcus's life, tearing apart everything he thought he knew about trust and loyalty. The quiet, loving home he had built would become the setting for a tragedy that no one could have foreseen. This is the story of a betrayal so intimate and devastating it ended in heartbreak, violence, and the destruction of an entire family. Before we dive into this heartbreaking case, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel here on The Last Confession for more shocking stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about trust. Marcus Wheeler was a man of principle, a 44-year-old sheriff whose life revolved around his unwavering commitment to justice and family. Respected in his community for his integrity and calm leadership, Marcus took great pride in the life he had built. At the center of it all was Elena, the woman he married 15 years ago and the mother of his 4 children. Their love story began when Marcus was a young deputy, eager to make a difference in the world, and Elena was volunteering at a community event. She was magnetic, with a smile that could light up a room, and Marcus, typically reserved, found himself captivated by her warmth and charm. Elena, 39, had grown up in the same city as Marcus, but their paths hadn't crossed until that fateful day. At least, that's what Marcus thought. In truth, Elena had a history that predated their relationship, a link to someone Marcus held close. His younger brother, Damien. Damien Wheeler, 41, was the opposite of Marcus in many ways. While Marcus was steady, disciplined, and focused, Damien was impulsive, charming, and carefree. He had always been the golden boy, the one who could make anyone laugh, talk his way out of trouble, and leave a lasting impression wherever he went. But his charm often masked a deep insecurity, a feeling that he was constantly living in Marcus's shadow. While Marcus had built a successful career and started a family, Damien's life had been a series of starts and stops. Failed relationships, odd jobs, and a restless pursuit of something he could never quite name. Elena had known Damien long before she ever met Marcus. They had attended the same high school, though their social circles rarely overlapped. Elena, quiet and studious, had admired Damien from afar. He was everything she wasn't: popular, confident, and seemingly untouchable. Like many others, she had fallen for his easy charm, though he barely noticed her. Years later, when Marcus brought her home to meet his family after they started dating, she was shocked to realize that Marcus's younger brother was the same Damien she had spent years secretly crushing on. Marcus introduced them with pride, oblivious to the flicker of recognition in Elena's eyes or the spark of amusement in Damien's. To Marcus, family was everything, and bringing Elena into the fold was a way of solidifying the future he envisioned for them. Damien, always quick to capitalize on an opportunity, played the role of the supportive younger brother, welcoming Elena with open arms. The connection between Elena and Damien was almost instantaneous, though they kept it hidden from Marcus. Their shared history became a private bond, something they could talk about in quiet moments that Marcus would never suspect. The affair didn't start immediately, but the foundation was laid in those early days. Damien visited often, his charm and humor making him a favorite among the family. Elena, feeling the weight of Marcus's demanding job and growing emotional distance, found herself drawn to Damien's attention. He noticed things Marcus didn't: the way she styled her hair, the effort she put into preparing meals, the moments when she seemed overwhelmed but tried to hide it. For Elena, it felt like someone finally saw her again. The first step across the line happened a year after Marcus and Elena's wedding. Damien had come over to help with a repair project while Marcus was working late. They talked and laughed as they worked, reminiscing about high school teachers and shared memories. When Damien leaned in closer, his hand brushing against hers, Elena didn't move away. It was a fleeting moment, but it opened the door to something neither of them could undo. For Damien, the affair was as much about desire as it was about rivalry. He had always envied Marcus, his discipline, his success, his ability to build a life that seemed so stable and complete. Taking something that belonged to Marcus felt like a twisted form of victory, a way to claim a piece of the life he believed should have been his. But there was more to it than that. Damien had a secret, one he had kept buried for years. He had always resented Marcus for being the golden child in their family, the one their parents praised while Damien was left to fend for himself. The affair was his way of asserting dominance over Marcus, of proving that he could take what he wanted, even if it meant destroying his brother's life. Elena, for her part, justified the betrayal as filling a void that Marcus had left unaddressed, though the guilt lingered in quiet moments when she was alone. But there was another layer to her actions, one she had never shared with anyone. Years ago, before she met Marcus, she had a brief fling with Damien. It was a reckless, impulsive decision, one she had regretted almost immediately, but it had left her with a secret, one she had carried for years. Liam, her eldest son, was Damien's child. She had never told Marcus, and when Damien re-entered her life, the unresolved feelings and guilt over her secret drew her back to him. Their secret relationship began in earnest, woven into the fabric of family gatherings, casual visits, and shared moments that Marcus never thought to question. The affair overlapped with the early years of Marcus and Elena's marriage, a period during which 3 of their 4 children were conceived. While Marcus worked tirelessly to provide for his growing family, Damien and Elena carried on their betrayal, convinced that their secret would never come to light. Marcus, devoted to his family and his work, never suspected the cracks forming beneath the surface of his seemingly perfect life. He adored his children: Liam, the responsible and mature eldest; Noah, the playful and curious middle child; Emma, the quiet and thoughtful observer; and Sophia, the youngest and only daughter, whose innocence and joy lit up the household. To Marcus, his family was everything, the anchor that kept him grounded in the chaos of his demanding career. He had no idea that the foundation of that family was built on a lie, one that would eventually come to destroy everything he held dear. The affair between Elena and Damien began as an unexpected connection reignited from their high school years, but it quickly spiraled into something far more intense. In the early days, their interactions were subtle, lingering looks, a brush of hands when no one was watching, and stolen conversations that carried a spark neither of them could ignore. What started as innocent nostalgia for their shared past became a dangerous web of desire and deceit, entwining their lives in ways they hadn't anticipated. The first time they crossed the line, it felt electric, almost inevitable. Damien had come over while Marcus was working late, an all-too-common occurrence given Marcus's demanding schedule as a sheriff. Elena had asked for help with a household repair, and Damien, ever the charmer, was happy to oblige. Their laughter as they reminisced about high school memories turned into something deeper when Elena brushed past him in the narrow hallway. Damien, emboldened by the moment, leaned in for a kiss. Elena didn't resist. That single act set the tone for what would become years of secret meetings and shared betrayals. As the affair progressed, they became masters at hiding their relationship from Marcus. They were careful, always making sure their stolen moments were well-timed. Family gatherings became opportunities for whispered conversations and fleeting touches when no one else was looking. Damien would offer to babysit the kids while Elena ran errands, a perfect excuse to spend time alone together. Their shared history gave them a natural cover. After all, it wasn't unusual for in-laws to bond over their past. Marcus never thought to question it. Damien often found himself conflicted about the affair, particularly in the beginning. He knew it was wrong, not just because Elena was married, but because she was married to his brother. The weight of that betrayal sat heavy on his chest, but every time he thought about ending it, Elena's presence would pull him back. Her attention, her touch, it all filled a void in Damien's life, a sense of worth he had never quite achieved on his own. But there was more to it than that. Damien had a darker side, one he kept hidden from everyone, even Elena. He had always resented Marcus for being the golden child in their family, the one their parents praised while Damien was left to fend for himself. The affair was his way of asserting dominance over Marcus, of proving that he could take what he wanted, even if it meant destroying his brother's life. Elena, for her part, was equally torn. She loved her family and cared deeply for Marcus, but Damien made her feel seen and desired in ways she hadn't experienced in years. One of the most intoxicating aspects of their relationship was Elena's ability to make Damien feel powerless in the best way. Her confidence, especially in their intimate moments, was something Damien couldn't resist. Elena had a way of making him feel as though he was the center of her universe, and her skill in the bedroom was unmatched. She knew exactly how to keep him coming back, her mastery of fellatio leaving him breathless and addicted. Even when Damien tried to pull away, convinced he needed to stop before they got caught, the memory of her touch, her lips, and the way she made him feel would draw him back in. Their passion for each other wasn't just physical. It was laced with danger, guilt, and the thrill of the forbidden. It was this mix of emotions that made their connection so intense and so difficult to break. Elena knew exactly how to keep Damien entangled, offering just enough affection to make him feel needed without demanding too much in return. Damien, for all his charm and bravado, was powerless to resist. He hated himself for it, but he hated the idea of letting her go even more. The secrecy of their affair added to its intensity. Every stolen kiss, every whispered word felt magnified by the risk they were taking. They developed elaborate ways to communicate without raising suspicion. Damien would send Elena innocuous text messages disguised as conversations about family matters. Elena would arrange errands that conveniently placed her near Damien's apartment or job, ensuring they could steal moments together without being noticed. Even in the Wheeler household, they found ways to hide in plain sight, using family gatherings and casual visits as cover for their stolen intimacy. For years, they managed to keep the affair hidden. To Marcus, the bond between Elena and Damien seemed like a natural extension of their family dynamic. He never questioned Damien's frequent visits or the way Elena's mood seemed to lift whenever Damien was around. He was too focused on providing for his family, too trusting of the people he loved most, to see the truth unfolding right in front of him. But secrets have a way of surfacing, no matter how carefully they're buried. Elena and Damien's affair, built on passion, betrayal, and lies, was bound to unravel. The deeper they fell into their secret world, the more precarious their situation became. Every stolen moment carried the risk of discovery, and every whisper of guilt hinted at the storm that was coming. For years, Marcus remained blissfully unaware of the betrayal unfolding in his own home. He took pride in his family, adoring each of his children and cherishing the life he believed they had built together. But everything changed one afternoon when Elena, in what seemed like a casual comment, mentioned how much Noah's smile reminded her of Damien's. The remark, though innocent on the surface, struck a chord deep within Marcus. He brushed it off at first, but the thought lingered, gnawing at the back of his mind. Questions began to form, small, unsettling doubts that he couldn't shake. Unable to ignore the unease, Marcus decided to put his concerns to rest once and for all. But the path to confirming his worst fears wasn't easy. He spent days researching how to conduct a DNA test discreetly, not wanting to arouse Elena's suspicion. His hands trembled as he placed the order for the home DNA kit online, using an alternate delivery address to keep it hidden from his family. When the kit arrived, Marcus hid it carefully in his car, waiting for the right moment to collect the samples he needed. Marcus planned meticulously, taking time to ensure his actions wouldn't be noticed. Late one night, while the children were asleep and Elena was in the shower, he crept into their rooms. From Liam's desk, he grabbed a used pencil with faint teeth marks on the eraser. Noah's bedside table provided a partially chewed straw from a juice box, and Emma's laundry basket held a discarded sock he could use for Sophia. He carefully picked a strand of hair from her brush, whispering an apology to himself as he did so. Each item was sealed in a plastic bag, labeled, and tucked away in the kit. The final piece of the puzzle was his own DNA sample. Sitting alone in his car late that night, Marcus swabbed his cheek, following the kit's instructions with grim determination. As he sealed the swab and placed it with the others, a wave of nausea rolled over him. What was he doing? The very act of collecting these samples felt like a betrayal of his family, a violation of the trust he had worked so hard to build. But the doubts had taken root too deeply to ignore. When he mailed the samples off the next morning, Marcus couldn't shake the knot in his stomach. He told himself it was nothing, that he would receive the results in a few weeks, laugh at his foolishness, and put the matter to rest. But as the days dragged on, his anxiety grew. He became more watchful, scrutinizing every interaction between Elena and Damien. Every glance, every laugh, every shared moment. The thought of them together in ways he couldn't bear to imagine haunted him. When the results finally arrived, Marcus opened the envelope with trembling hands. The words stared back at him like a death sentence. Liam, Noah, and Emma were not biologically his. Only Sophia, his youngest, carried his DNA. The paper fell from his hands as the room seemed to close in around him. Rage, betrayal, and devastation collided in his mind, leaving him with only one thought. He needed answers. The moment Marcus processed the damning evidence, a rage like he had never known overtook him. The family he had devoted his life to, the children he had loved unconditionally, were the result of a betrayal so deep it made his blood boil. He didn't stop to think. He didn't pause to plan. With the DNA results clutched in his shaking hands, he drove home in a blur, his mind spinning with accusations and fury. Marcus burst through the front door, calling out for Elena, his voice echoing through the house like a thunderclap. There was no answer, only a chilling silence that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time, his heart pounding in his chest. When he reached their bedroom, he froze. There, on the bed they had shared for years, were Elena and Damien, caught in the throes of their affair. The betrayal he had just uncovered in black and white DNA evidence now played out in vivid, undeniable reality before his eyes. Elena's face turned pale as she saw Marcus standing in the doorway, the rage etched into every line of his expression. Damien, ever the smooth talker, tried to speak, but Marcus didn't give him the chance. In a blind fury, Marcus reached for the firearm he carried as part of his duty as a sheriff. The years of deceit, the lies, and the image of his children, all of it boiled over in a moment of uncontrollable rage. Without hesitation, he fired. The first shot hit Damien square in the chest, silencing his brother's arrogant smirk forever. Elena screamed, her hands flying up as if to shield herself from the truth that was now unavoidable. A second shot rang out, and she fell silent, collapsing onto the bed where her betrayal had been laid bare. The room fell into a deafening quiet, broken only by the sound of Marcus's heavy breathing as he stood over their lifeless bodies. The weight of what he had done began to settle over him like a dark cloud. But in that moment, all he could feel was the crushing devastation of a life built on lies. His world, once so carefully constructed, lay in ruins, with the truth exposed in the most horrifying way possible. The first shot echoed through the house, followed immediately by the second. The sound was deafening, shattering the silence of the evening like a clap of thunder. The Wheeler children, nestled in their rooms, froze at the noise. It took only seconds for the realization to set in. Something was terribly wrong. Liam, the eldest at 14, was the first to react, bolting out of his room and down the hallway. Behind him, Noah and Emma emerged, their faces pale with fear. Little Sophia, just 5 years old, sat frozen on her bed, clutching a stuffed bear as the sound of her siblings' frantic voices filled the house. "Mom! Dad!" Liam shouted, his voice cracking as he rushed toward the master bedroom. Noah tried to hold him back, pleading, "Don't go," but Liam shrugged him off, determined to find out what had happened. Emma lingered in the hallway, trembling, while Sophia began to cry softly, her young mind unable to grasp the gravity of the situation. Inside the master bedroom, Marcus stood over the lifeless bodies of Elena and Damien. The acrid smell of gunpowder hung in the air, mingling with the oppressive silence that followed the gunshots. His firearm slipped from his trembling hands and clattered to the floor. His breath came in shallow gasps as he stared at what he had done, the reality sinking in like a knife to the chest. The rage that had driven him moments ago evaporated, replaced by an overwhelming wave of regret and horror. The muffled cries of his children outside the door brought Marcus back to his senses. He couldn't let them see this. He stepped into the hallway, closing the bedroom door behind him with a trembling hand. Liam stopped in his tracks, his face pale and stricken with fear. "Dad, what happened?" he stammered. Marcus couldn't meet his son's eyes. His voice was low and hoarse as he said, "Go to your room. Take your brothers and sister. Now." Liam hesitated, sensing the gravity of his father's tone. "But, go," Marcus barked, his voice cracking with a mix of authority and anguish. The children retreated, huddling together in Liam's room, their muffled cries filling the silence. Marcus walked downstairs, his movements slow and deliberate. Once in the living room, he sank into the couch and pulled out his phone. His hands shook violently as he dialed 911. The operator answered with practiced calm, but Marcus could barely find the words. "It's me, Marcus," he said, his voice hollow. I just killed my wife and my brother. I'm sorry. I need the police." The operator began asking questions. Was he armed? Were there others in danger? But Marcus didn't answer. He ended the call and sat in silence, his head in his hands. The weight of what he had done pressed down on him like a crushing burden. The distant sound of sirens grew louder with each passing second, a stark reminder that his life was about to change forever. When the police arrived, Marcus didn't resist. He walked to the front door as the officers approached, their weapons drawn. "I'm unarmed," he said, raising his hands. His voice was devoid of emotion, his eyes glassy and unfocused. The officers handcuffed him and led him out of the house. As they escorted him to the patrol car, Marcus glanced up at the window where Liam stood, watching in silence, his face pressed against the glass. The investigation was straightforward. The crime scene provided clear evidence of what had occurred. Marcus's service firearm, discarded on the floor, matched the bullets. His 911 call left no room for doubt about his guilt. While the police refrained from directly involving the children in the investigation, the trauma they had endured was impossible to ignore. Hearing the gunshots, witnessing their father's state after the crime, and being present in a house where such violence had occurred left psychological scars that couldn't be undone. In addition to being charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, Marcus was also charged with 4 counts of child abuse. The prosecution argued that his actions had inflicted severe emotional harm on his children, placing them in a situation that no child should ever have to endure. By committing the murders in the family home, knowing the children were present, Marcus had demonstrated a reckless disregard for their well-being. The charges reflected the irreversible impact his decisions had on Liam, Noah, Emma, and Sophia, who would carry the weight of that night for the rest of their lives. Marcus was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 4 counts of child abuse. The prosecution painted him as a man who allowed his anger and jealousy to consume him, turning a betrayal into a calculated act of violence that devastated his family. They emphasized his position as a sheriff, arguing that his training and role in the community made his actions all the more egregious. The defense, however, portrayed Marcus as a man pushed to the brink, whose crime was born of unimaginable betrayal rather than premeditated malice. Despite the legal arguments, Marcus knew he had no defense for what he had done. He didn't fight the charges, accepting the weight of his guilt without protest. The case was a spectacle, drawing widespread media attention, but Marcus remained stoic throughout. For him, the trial and the inevitable sentence were secondary to the unbearable loss of his family. The life he had built, the trust he had cherished, all reduced to ashes by his own actions. Marcus was convicted on both counts of first-degree murder and 4 counts of child abuse, receiving a life sentence without the possibility of parole. The judge's words during sentencing were stern yet tinged with sorrow. While the betrayal you suffered is undeniable, the law cannot excuse the choices you made in response. You took 2 lives, and in doing so, shattered the lives of your children and your community. As Marcus was led away in handcuffs, His thoughts turned to his children. He knew they would carry the burden of his actions for the rest of their lives. His only hope, though distant and unlikely, was that one day they might find it in their hearts to forgive him, even as he struggled to forgive himself. This case is a devastating reminder of the cost of betrayal and the irreversible consequences of unchecked rage. What started as a marriage built on love and trust spiraled into heartbreak, violence, and unimaginable tragedy. At its heart lies a question we must all grapple with. Could honesty and transparency have prevented this devastating outcome? Or was the betrayal so deep, so interwoven into their lives, that destruction was inevitable? Marcus Wheeler's story is one of love and loyalty twisted by deceit and rage. A respected sheriff, a father, a man devoted to his family, was driven to commit an unthinkable act when the truth unraveled before him. But was his crime born of temporary insanity, a single moment of blinding fury? Or was it the ultimate betrayal, the years of secrets and lies festering, compounding, until there was no way forward but violence? What do you think? Was Marcus a victim of his emotions, pushed to the brink by an unimaginable betrayal? Or does the blame lie squarely on his shoulders? And how much responsibility falls on Elena and Damien for keeping their devastating secret for so long, knowing it could one day tear the family apart? If this story shocked you, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel here on The Last Confession for more cases that delve into the darkest corners of human relationships and explore the devastating consequences of secrets, lies, and betrayal. Until next time, stay safe out there.